For more than 4 decades, one question has haunted Hollywood, a question whispered behind closed doors, buried in documentaries, and etched into sleepless interviews. At the center of this unending mystery stands Robert Wagner, a man once celebrated for his effortless charm, his grace, and that unmistakable Hollywood aura. Yet over time, that shine faded, replaced by shadows of guilt and unanswered doubt. Now at 95 years old, time has stripped away everything: fame, glamour, denial, leaving behind only the truth he's carried alone since that freezing night in 1981. A night of love turned to fear, of laughter turned to silence. A night that would change not only his life, but Hollywood itself, forever. It was the Thanksgiving weekend of November 28, 1981, a time when most Americans gathered with family, grateful for warmth and comfort. But for Hollywood's golden couple, Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner, it was meant to be something simpler, a quiet escape from the spotlight. They set sail on their yacht, the Splendor, near Catalina Island, joined by Natalie's brainstorm co-star Christopher Walken and the yacht's captain, Dennis Davern. The ocean breeze was gentle, the champagne cold, and for a brief moment everything seemed perfect. For Natalie, this was supposed to be a short breath of peace between film sets, a chance to recharge, to smile again without cameras flashing. But beneath that surface calm, something darker was stirring. That night would not bring peace. It would bring questions, whispers, and tragedy that would echo for the rest of Wagner's life. The afternoon began like a scene from one of their own films. Champagne flowed. Laughter filled the deck. Natalie and Robert posed for a few photographs, the ocean glimmering behind them like a postcard from paradise. Locals later remembered spotting them at Doug's Harbor Reef restaurant, where they toasted to friendship and love, their smiles hiding the tension quietly brewing beneath. As the drinks kept coming, so did the sharp edges of jealousy. Christopher Walken spoke passionately about Natalie's career, her desire to take on deeper, more serious roles again. But to Wagner, those words cut deeper than intended. In his 2008 memoir, Pieces of My Heart, Wagner would later admit, tension had been brewing, and jealousy got the best of me. When they returned to the Splendor around 10 p.m., the atmosphere had changed completely. The laughter was gone, replaced by silence that clung to the air like fog. Captain Davern later said he could feel it, that uneasy heaviness that always comes before something breaks. Inside the cabin, whispers turned to raised voices. Wagner's composure cracked. A wine bottle shattered across the table, shards scattering as he accused Natalie of flirting with Walken. His voice, once calm and magnetic, trembled with fury. Walken tried to calm the storm, but eventually withdrew to his cabin, leaving behind only the sound of muffled shouting and a tension thick enough to drown in. Moments later, everything went quiet, too quiet. The sudden silence after the argument was deafening. Captain Dennis Davern, still awake, sensed that something was wrong. The sound of voices had stopped, replaced by the soft hum of the yacht drifting on dark waters. Then, nothing. According to Robert Wagner, he believed Natalie had gone to bed, but when he finally noticed her absence, a wave of dread washed over him. The yacht's small rubber dinghy, the Valiant, was also missing. Yet those who knew Natalie best found that impossible to believe. She had always been terrified of deep water ever since childhood. The thought that she would set out alone in the cold night, barefoot, wearing only a thin nightgown, made no sense at all. At 3:30 a.m., Wagner made the desperate call to the Coast Guard. Searchlights cut through the blackness as rescue boats combed the icy waves near Catalina Island. Hours passed with no sign of her, and then, as dawn crept over the horizon of November 29th, 1981, the ocean revealed its secret. Natalie Wood's body was found floating face down, less than a mile from the Splendor. She was only 43 years old. She wore a light nightgown, socks, and a red parka, clothes far too thin for the freezing sea. The coroner called it an accident, but the bruises on her arms and legs, the scratches on her neck, and her lifelong fear of water painted a very different picture. Hollywood fell silent that day, but behind closed doors, 3 words began to echo in every studio, every gossip column, every late-night conversation: jealousy, rage, and regret. In the days that followed, the world demanded answers, yet what the investigators offered was a story that seemed too convenient. According to Robert Wagner, after the argument with Christopher Walken, Natalie had gone to bed. He claimed that sometime later she must have heard the yacht's dinghy banging against the hull, gone out to secure it, slipped, and fallen into the dark, frigid water. For a time, that explanation seemed to calm the public. It was neat, tidy, and free of scandal, everything Hollywood needed to move on. But soon cracks began to appear. The dinghy, the Valiant, was found drifting hours later. The engine was off, yet the key was still in the ignition. The oars were tied down, and the light switch off. There were no footprints, no signs that anyone had climbed aboard. It looked untouched, as though no one had ever tried to use it. Investigators began to wonder if Natalie had truly gone to secure the dinghy. Why hadn't she untied the oars or started the motor? Then came the autopsy report, and with it, new mysteries. Her blood alcohol level measured 0.1%, and traces of seasickness medication and painkillers were found in her system, enough to leave her disoriented, unsteady, and vulnerable. But what unsettled investigators most were the fresh bruises on her arms, knees, and face, marks that hinted at a struggle, not accident. In 2013, the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office released an update confirming that the bruising may have occurred before she entered the water, directly contradicting the accidental fall theory. Then witnesses began to come forward. 2 people anchored on a nearby boat, Marilyn Wayne and John Payne, claimed they heard a woman screaming, "Help me! Someone please help me!" For nearly 15 minutes, just after 11 p.m., Wayne said she would never forget that voice. It was desperate, terrified. A man's voice eventually replied, slurred but calm, "Okay, honey, we're coming to get you." But no one came. The next sound was silence. Over the years, Wagner's story changed, sometimes subtly, sometimes completely. In 1981, he told police that Natalie had simply gone missing. Later, he said she went to tie up the dinghy. In his 2008 memoir, Pieces of My Heart, he insisted it was a tragic accident. But as Lieutenant John Corina of the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department would later say in 2018, he's constantly changed his story a little bit, and it just doesn't add up. By 2012, the official cause of death on Natalie Wood's certificate was changed to drowning and other undetermined factors. Wagner was named a person of interest, yet without physical evidence or direct witnesses, no charges were ever filed. The case hung in limbo, caught between suspicion and sorrow, between truth and the legend of a love that turned to tragedy. While Robert Wagner chose silence, one person refused to let the story die. Lana Wood, Natalie's younger sister, For Lana, the official version of events was more than just a lie. It was a betrayal. "My sister was terrified of water," she said in countless interviews. She would never go near that dinghy, not in her nightgown, not in the dark. Lana's determination to uncover the truth became her life's mission. In her 2021 memoir, Little Sister, My Investigation into the Mysterious Death of Natalie Wood, she accused Wagner of a jealous rage that went too far. According to Lana, Captain Dennis Davern privately confessed to her that he had lied to protect Wagner. She claimed Davern told her Wagner had shouted. There was a loud bang, and then Wagner gave a chilling command. "Don't turn on the lights, don't call anyone." Her accusations split Hollywood in two. Some believed her, a grieving sister fighting for justice. Others dismissed her, a woman chasing ghosts of the past. But Lana's persistence forced the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department to reopen the investigation in 2011, nearly 3 decades after Natalie's death. New witnesses came forward. Old memories resurfaced. A fisherman, only 17 at the time, claimed he heard a woman crying for help that night. Another acquaintance recalled Wagner's temper from the 1960s, calling it the kind that could flare in seconds. Each revelation deepened the mystery, but still brought no closure. Prosecutors never pressed charges, lacking the solid evidence that could turn whispers into proof. Finally, in 2022, police officially announced that Robert Wagner had been cleared of direct involvement, though the case remained officially unsolved. Their statement read simply, "All leads in the Natalie Wood case have been exhausted." For Lana, those words felt like a knife. To her, it wasn't closure, it was surrender. "If he truly loved my sister," she said bitterly, "why has he stayed silent before justice?" To this day, she insists Wagner knows more than he's ever admitted. He was the last person with her, Lana says. And that silence is the loudest thing of all. After Natalie's death, Robert Wagner's perfectly polished world came crashing down. For decades, he had embodied Hollywood's ideal of sophistication, the charming gentleman, the consummate leading man. But when Natalie's lifeless body was pulled from the dark waters off Catalina Island, that image shattered overnight. The tragedy didn't just take his wife, it took his identity. The public demanded answers. The press wanted blood. Tabloids splashed his face across front pages with brutal headlines, "Murder, Jealous Rage, Cover Up." And though no court ever charged him, the court of public opinion had already made its judgment. Every interview request came with the same unspoken question. Did you kill your wife? The man who once thrived under the glow of studio lights began to shrink from them. He canceled appearances. He refused interviews. He withdrew into the shadows, a ghost of the star he once was. Friends described him as polite in public but hollow behind closed doors. A man haunted not just by suspicion, but by silence. For years, Wagner said nothing. Then, in 2008, he broke his silence with the release of his memoir, Pieces of My Heart. It wasn't a defense, it was a confession of grief. "Not a day goes by that I don't think of Natalie," he wrote. "I loved her with all my heart, and losing her was the darkest moment of my life." Some saw a widower finally confronting his pain. Others saw a man trying to rewrite his past. In the years that followed, the investigation reopened, and the headlines came roaring back. Talk shows dissected his words. Tabloids dug up inconsistencies. Even police officials hinted that his story didn't quite fit. Through it all, Wagner chose silence again, but silence, meant to protect him, only deepened the cloud of doubt surrounding him. Then came 2020, and with it, a voice from a new generation, his daughter, Natasha Gregson Wagner. In her HBO documentary, Natalie Wood, What Remains Behind, Natasha stepped into a storm her father had avoided for decades. It's outrageous, she said, that people built this monster out of my dad. He loved my mom. He would have given his life for her. She was just 11 years old when her mother died. Her last memory was of hugging Natalie before that fateful trip, feeling the softness of her Angora sweater. I said, "Don't go," Natasha recalled through tears. Her defense brought tenderness, but not peace. Lana Wood continued her public accusations, keeping the family painfully divided. And between the anger and the grief, one truth became clear. Whether innocent or guilty, Robert Wagner had already received a life sentence, not from the courts, but from his own heart. For him, the punishment was not the investigation. It was the silence that followed. By 2025, Robert Wagner was 95 years old, frail, quiet, and a shell of the man who once embodied Hollywood's golden age. His hair had turned silver long ago, but his memory remained sharp enough to replay that one night over and over like a film he could never stop watching. When he finally agreed to a recorded interview, his voice trembled, each word weighed down by the ghosts of his past. "People call me a monster, a liar, a coward," he said softly. "But the truth is simpler. I was a man in love who made mistakes, and I've paid for them every single day since." It wasn't a confession, but it wasn't a denial either. His words lived in that gray space, somewhere between guilt and grief, where truth becomes blurred by emotion and time. He no longer sounded like a man defending himself. He sounded like a man who had already accepted judgment, not from the world, but from within. When asked what truly happened that night in November 1981, Wagner hesitated. Then, almost whispering, he said, "After I argued with Chris, I went to find Natalie, and she was gone. I thought she needed time alone. I should have gone after her. Maybe she'd still be here." He paused, his eyes heavy with tears. "I was the last man with her." Those words became his burden, repeated again and again in his later years. To him, it was both a truth and a curse. Friends who visited said he rarely spoke of Hollywood anymore. He didn't talk about the films, the fame, or the glory days. Every conversation circled back to her, to Natalie. He never again lived near the ocean. The sound of waves, once comforting, had become unbearable. Instead, he lived inland, surrounded by old photographs and fading memories. His daughter Courtney once described his days as quiet but heavy. Every time he saw a photo of Mom, she said, he'd fall silent. You could feel the sadness in the room. It never left him. To the public, Robert Wagner remained the polished actor, the gentleman from heart to heart. But behind closed doors, he was a man undone by love, regret, and silence. Even at 95, the ocean still called to him, not with peace, but with the echoes of that night that would never let him go. In private notes, later shared by Natasha, Wagner wrote, "She was my compass, my direction. When she died, I lost all sense of where I was going." He lived a long life, but one haunted by what he could never explain. The missing hours, the crashing waves, and the name he never stopped whispering, Natalie. After 43 years, the truth about Natalie Wood's death still drifts somewhere between memory and mystery. Robert Wagner's final words did not reveal answers, only the unbearable weight of regret. Was it an accident, a moment of anger, or something in between? Only 2 people truly knew what happened that night, and one of them never came back. So what do you believe? Was Natalie Wood's death a tragic accident or the result of a jealous rage? Tell us what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and to stay tuned for more stories that uncover the hidden truths behind Hollywood's most haunting legends.